am delighted to be here with the Chief Minister of the ACT and the Education Minister, and thank you very much to Colleen and her team for having us in this wonderful school that's got an all-star cast when it comes to former pupils. We've had a great exchange today talking to the students here, so it's been a very special delight to have the opportunity to come out of Parliament, see some school kids and answer some questions. But we are here for a very important occasion, and that is today I am announcing with the Chief Minister that the ACT and the federal government have reached agreement on our reform agenda and school funding plans. People around the nation would have heard the word Gonski used. David Gonski and his team of experts led our nation to a new way of approaching school. That in every school around the country that they had the right resources for generations to come so that children could get an excellent education. The ACT has become the second jurisdiction today to sign on to this new funding arrangement, but also to all of the new ways of working in school, which we know will make a difference for our children and the standard of their education. What we're trying to achieve through these agreements right around the country is that our kids have got a better resource classroom, but what that means for those children is that they'll have more access to one-on-one support as they learn. There will be specialist teachers there to support kids. There will be literacy and numeracy coaches there to support kids. Kids will be able to have access to the equipment they need. Teachers will be supported to teach at their very best, and new teachers will be particularly supported so that they can be high-achieving teachers across their career. Principals will be more empowered to work with their local community and to focus on school improvement. These are practical changes in our classrooms. I want to see them in every classroom around the country in all 9,500 schools. I'm delighted we've been able to reach agreement with the ACT, and here that will mean an investment of an extra $190 million between the two jurisdictions to make a difference to the learning of our children. In addition, here in the ACT, because it is home to so many high-achieving schools, today we are announcing that we will work with the ACT and provide $26 million of funding over 6 years to establish a centre for quality teaching and learning at the University of Canberra. We believe the ACT is the right place for such a centre because of the high achievement of its schools. I'll hand over now to the Chief Minister, to Katy, to make some comments.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and look, it's great to be here. The ACT has long been an advocate of national funding reform and the National School Plan for School Improvement. So we're really pleased that we've been able to reach agreement with the Commonwealth today. What this means is that there will be no school worse off in the ACT. Indeed, all schools will receive extra support over the next 6 years. What it also means is that for every student in the ACT, regardless of where you go to school, whether you're in a Catholic system primary school or a small primary school on the outer of Canberra, or in a busy large school in the middle of Canberra, you will get the same access to resources and support as every other student in the Territory. I think one of the issues that I'm really pleased about is this national funding reform puts to bed the government and non-government school divide once and for all. It says regardless of where you go to school, this is the money that we need to provide you with an excellent education. And that's a really important part of the reform. We've also been very supportive of this nationally. The ACT is in a unique position where we're already a very high-performing and well-resourced education system. So in many ways, we have a system that many of the other jurisdictions are wanting to reach over the transition period. And this puts us in a great position, but it also means for us as a country that we are very supportive of students in less resource systems outside of the ACT getting adequate resourcing through this agreement as well. We've been supportive of that from the beginning, and we continue to be. I don't think this should be a who gets what from whom debate. It should be that all kids in Australia get access to a high quality education. We're very pleased with the announcement of the support for the University of Canberra for a National Quality Teaching Institute. Again, this is important for our system because we already perform very highly. This will give an opportunity to take our teachers to the next level as well. So we're pleased. We think it's a great national reform. The ACT's wanted to reach agreement and we've done that today.
Thank you. We're happy to take questions.
Prime Minister, the ACT has had out of its universities ripped out almost $30 million a year for the Gonski cuts. You're putting in a little over $30 million a year in this Gonski reform. There's hardly any net gain for the ACT. That doesn't sound like education reform, does it?
Well, it most certainly is. First, in terms of universities here in the ACT and then right around the country, as a result of this government, funding to universities has increased by more than 50%. And funding in universities will continue to increase next year and the year after and the year after that and so on. That's because I want us to be a nation with high-quality universities. But when we've increased funding so rapidly, what we are asking universities to do is still get more funding, but moderate the rate of growth, and for that funding to be made available to support a higher quality education for our kids, for all of the changes in schools that I spoke about before, which will enable our children to reach their full potential. So that's the reform we're seeking to achieve here in the ACT and right around the nation. As the Chief Minister has just said to you, this is a reform that ends for all time. The warring and intersector politics between Catholic, independent and public schools, it means that we can all be assured that for generations to come, there will be the right resources available for the education of our nation's children.
Well, did you be disappointed that on another winter that you had another sandwich thrown at you?
Oh, I think I must have thought I was hungry.
The ACT is quite a small jurisdiction. Do you think that this will have any impact on other jurisdictions signing up to Gonski?
I think every agreement gives momentum to these reforms. Premier O'Farrell signed the first agreement. Now your Chief Minister has signed the second agreement. I think every signature gives momentum to the reforms because it becomes clearer and clearer that this is a good way of making sure our children get a great education. And so if your Chief Minister here is prepared to say that, if the Premier of New South Wales is prepared to say that, then I do think that that has an, force and effect for other premiers and leaders around the country.
The Treasurer said yesterday that the electoral reforms are about integrity in the system. Given that, will you be proceeding with the changes and putting that bill to Parliament?
This will be the subject of consideration, and I think Minister Albanese's already said that to you. Well, Mr Abbott has said to the nation that you can trust him if he signs on the dotted line. He said to the nation that you can trust what's in writing. What we know today is even if Mr Abbott signs on a dotted line, you can't trust it. There's a huge gulf between what Mr Abbott says and what Mr Abbott does. And that means for the Australian people, if Mr Abbott says to them that he won't cut schools, you can't believe him. If he says he won't cut healthcare, you can't believe him. If Mr Abbott says he won't cut to the bone, you can't believe him.
Question for Ms Gallagher. In terms of rates of indexation under this, will any non-government schools be worse off?
No, all schools will increase funding in real terms. The arrangement overall is for indexation as a system at 4.7%. Most of the schools who are at or above the school resourcing standard will be indexed at 3%. So no school will be worse off. In terms of additionality of the funding, that's over and above indexation, what schools need to get to the school resourcing standard over 6 years, the majority of that extra funding will go to the Catholic system primary schools, and that's because they're being recognised under the school resourcing standard as operating below that now. In the government system, for example, I think there's 4 schools that operate below the school resourcing standard, so most of our schools are at or above it at this point in time.
Is there any indication of what the funding will be over the 4 distance process?
It's what element of the funding, I mean there's indexation, there's additional funding. The additional funding over 6 years